Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Mickey Collins. I'm the marketing manager here at Velosio, and thank you all for joining us for this overview and webinar of advanced warehouse management inside Dynamics 365 supply chain management. Our host is our senior solutions architect, Paul Taylor. And with that, Paul, I'll let you take it away.
Okay, thanks, Mickey. Appreciate it. All right, so a little bit about me. I'm Paul Taylor, Senior Solutions Architect. I've been focused on supply chain management since the AX 2012, 2009 days. I work on delivery projects here at Velosio, so I'm implementing WMS daily. And previously, I've worked in pre-sales as well. So thanks for joining the webinar today. Today, we're going to cover what a lot of warehouses need. So, a lot of these webinars focus on certain features and functions. We'll do some of that. We'll cover some of the new features, but pretty much every warehouse is going to have these four things: receiving, put away, counting, and picking. So we're going to go through kind of a demo of how this works. I'll share some tips and how I set this up, how I implement it. As a lot of you know, advanced warehousing is kind of a blank canvas. So doesn't mean my way is the right way. It's just how I prefer to set it up. There's a lot of ways to set these things up in D365. For the most part, we will be in a live demonstration. I've got a couple slides just to kind of kick off each section, and then we'll jump over into the product. All right, so let's start with receiving. So there's multiple types of receiving: purchase orders, transfer orders, return orders. Today we're going to focus on purchase order receiving. And there is a way we can look up PO numbers to facilitate the receiving process. It's one of the issues with receiving is usually there's no barcodes anywhere. So how do you start? Typing in the PO number is a little bit of a pain, which some people do that, but I'll show you some other options today as well. And then once you get into receiving, there are some different flavors of receiving. We can do single purchase order receipts, pretty common. I see that a lot. Mixed license plates receiving, where you can receive multiple POs on a single license plate. Not as common in my experience, but it does happen. I haven't implemented that one as much. License plate receiving, used very frequently on transfer orders from one advanced warehouse to another. But you can also use it on purchase orders. I haven't implemented that a whole lot, but it demos really well. And I'm sure some of you out there use it. And then PO receive and put away. Do you want to do a single step or multi-step put away? So that one really depends on who's doing the put away, who's doing the receiving, the timing of it. If it happens at the same time, just go ahead and do both of them in one shot. We can create quality orders upon receipts as well. So that's fairly common. And there's also a quality check that can be implemented at time of receiving. And receiving's typically the first place we print a label for an item. So that's where the barcode labeling starts to print, typically. There are some common issues that I've seen. Maybe these are not all issues, but just some observations. Posting that product receipt separately. So when you receive from the warehouse app, you got to go back into Dynamics and post that product receipt. Unless you're using loads, there is a way to automate some of that. But that secondary step, I've heard some gripes about that before. The manual key entry, sometimes I see this performed just on a PC, the warehouse app on a PC, or not even use the warehouse app at all. Although usually I do see people using the warehouse app to print the label for sure and to create the put away work. But sometimes it happens on a PC so you can type in the information. I've seen a bunch of clients, or multiple anyway, customize the purchase order report to add barcodes so they can scan. So we can use electronic reporting for that. We don't have to do a customization. And I've got an example of that for today. And one of the issues I've seen with serial numbers is only the first serial number prints. So if you're receiving in 10 serials, you only get one label out of the box, only one prints. I guess that's because it's a license plate and the license plates on there. But if you're trying to print more of an item label, it really doesn't work with serials. I've had to customize this recently. So just some things to watch out for with serialization. So let's go into F&O and we'll start taking a look at the receiving process. So I'm going to head over to my purchase orders. And I've got a PO ready to receive in. Let me just find it, 131. Picked up the wrong one. Scrolled too quickly on me, 131. All right, so I've created this smartwatch item just because I wanted a variant. So this has a size and color on the item. We're going to see that a little bit more in the demo. And then we've got these common items. These are often used with warehousing. We're using a Contoso environment here, warehouse 24. So what we'll do first is go into the confirmation, and I'm going to print this confirmation. Print it using print management. And first, we'll just show the electronic report that has the barcodes on it. And maybe we'll show that if that prints. It's taking a second to print. Let's come on over here. I've got it, another one pulled up here. So this is what that electronic report looks like. Basically, we can add barcodes up here to the PO number and to the item, and we can do this through configuration only. So this doesn't require customization. I created this. I'm not a developer, and I was able to add barcodes. So this can help facilitate the receiving process. It looks like it is working now. There we go. 131 is the PO we're working with, and there's the items and quantities. So if you're not familiar with electronic reporting, really neat. I've used it for like picking lists and things like that, packing slips. So really pretty flexible there. So this is sort of the start of the process. So next, let's go into the warehouse app and let's get logged in. And we'll go to our inbound menu and purchase receipt. Okay, we'll start here. And one of the things I'll note is I've added a lookup down here. So this is called a detour. So a relatively new feature to be able to add detours to the system. Historically, you've had to type in a PO number or use a barcode like what I showed a minute ago. We can also do lookups now, which is pretty neat. So if I go into this lookup, it's going to look up for warehouse 24 and open orders. And it's going to give me a list of POs that I could potentially receive. And we can see here PO number 131. We've got PO 131 over here. And I can just select that to start the receiving process. So those detours, let me just show you where those are set up real quick. But those are pretty neat. We can add those lookups kind of all over the system. We can add buttons in. So if we go to our setup mobile device steps, I put a new detour in. I think it shows up down here at the bottom of the list. Yeah, purchase receive. Let me get this out of the way for a minute. And here's the detour. We can select the fields to send. I'm not sending anything in. And then what I'm getting back is the PO number. And there's an option to auto submit. So it actually, we didn't really see it, I guess, but it automatically submitted. I didn't have to press the OK button. That's essentially what that does. All right, so now let's start receiving. So I'm just gonna type these values in. SW001. My quantity is 1. Okay, and this is where labels start printing as well. I need a serial number for this one. We'll do serial 90. Got that. And I'm going to bring up my label printer. That's going to print here in just a second, the virtual label printer. And I've got this set up for cluster put away. So actually, there's the label that just printed 23. You can see license plate 23 right there. So this is set up for cluster put away. You know, how I'll explain cluster put away is kind of like putting to a cart, or maybe, yeah, to a cart basically. And then you want to put everything on that cart away efficiently. So this is a really good way to do this. We're going to put this, I'm going to put it on the cart 04. All right, so that works complete. Let's go ahead and receive in the next item, which is A001. Everybody's favorite WMS item, quantity of 10. Okay, and we're going to move this to the cart as well. Cart 4. You can see the label printed on the left-hand side. And then our next one is A002. This one we're receiving 20. And we'll put this on the cart as well. Cart 4. And there's our label just printed. Okay, so, all right, so those are all received. I'm gonna go, before we start the put away piece, let's just go talk about put away first. So I'm gonna come back to the PowerPoint and we'll jump into put away real quick, set the stage, and then we'll come right back and demo that. So different put away methods, kind of methodologies, directed versus manual put away. I've seen both, depending on the complexity of the warehouse. You know, manual put aways sometimes are just fine. The user figures out where things go and just does like a manual movement, or we have a blank location in the put away work and the user scans a location. More complex warehouses are going to have more of a directed option where you want certain items to go to certain areas, maybe license plates to go up high in a bulk area, or maybe you want to fill up a pick face. So there's different ways to do that. There are some strategies that are out of the box. This is not a full list, it's just some common strategies. So consolidate, that lets you put the item basically where it already is stored. So if you already have an item in a certain spot out in the warehouse, consolidate will drive you to that same location. And it makes things more efficient so you don't have the same item stored all over the place. Empty locations, another common one. That'll get you an empty spot to put it with nothing else coming into that location. And sometimes none is used, like in the manual put away option, maybe the user figures out where things go. So it just depends. I've seen all those used before. So let's go do the put away. We only got 45 minutes, so we're gonna go quick. All right, and what we need to do to kick this off, I'm gonna go bring up the work cluster. And I've got cart 4. Here's the 4, or the 3 different items we received in. I'm gonna close this cluster. That's gonna get it ready to be put away. So next we'll go into our cart put away, cluster put away menu item. And we're gonna put in cart 4. All right, and in the background, I'm gonna refresh. And we can see this is open, but the cluster status is in process. My user has it locked. So I'm actually putting away multiple work IDs at the same time. See, the total quantity we're putting away is 31. So this takes everything on the cart and it kind of shuffles it in the right order, that by the most efficient put away method, it's gonna sort of tell you how to put these items away in a way that makes sense. Go ahead and start that. All right, so the smartwatch is going to this location, FL003. And then this item's going to pick 1. And before I finish, I'm just going to refresh and just show we're going through this work right here. And notice FL003, then pick 0001, then pick 2. That's sorted correctly. So it's picking up these locations in the right sequence. It's kind of a simple demo of that. But if you have a bunch of things on the cart, that's going to be important. So you're not zigzagging all around the warehouse for put-away processes. All right, pick 2. All right, that cluster is complete. We can go look at it. Cart 4, here's everything that was complete. And that work is complete. So let's talk a little bit about how these locations were selected, pick 02, FL003, etc. So if I go into the location directives, I'm going to go to purchase orders. This is sort of the brains behind everything. How do we pick certain locations? So we can set up different actions and different strategies. But I want to focus on kind of one of the newer features here called acceptance tests, which is really neat. As a consultant, working with these location directives, figuring out the right place of how the location directive is working. And we spend a lot of time creating new work IDs and figuring out which location gets populated, canceling the work, running it again. We don't have to do that anymore. We've got these acceptance tests. So we can run these tests, and I've got one for the smartwatch item. This is for purchase order, put away. Here's the size and color. And I can put in the location I'm expecting it to go to. So I'll just put in the wrong one, for example. And you can see we could have different options here too, locations with profile in a zone, or even locations that match a regular expression. And when we run this, it's going to show if it passed or failed. So it actually picked up location FL003 based on the directive. So this failed. But if I put in FL003 and run it, this time it's going to pass because that's what the directive is returning. Now let's go create a new one. I'll just show you how this works for a new item. All right, so item, we're going to do purchase orders, put. We'll do 1 each, warehouse 24. And this time I want to get it into a zone. So let's see. I'm expecting this to go to pick zone 2. So we'll run that. No, it failed. It actually is in pick 001. Okay, well, let's change this to pick zone 1, which pick 001 is associated to pick zone 1. We run that. This time it passed. So these acceptance tests, I'm a little bit of a nerd, but I think these are pretty cool. So, all right, one other new feature I want to talk about a little bit. It's related to label printing, not really related to put away. It's a bit of a different topic. Label printing is Microsoft has added ad hoc label printing, which is super neat. So if I go into label layouts, which is a newish form, there's this new thing called custom labels. And you can create, for one, you can add multiple tables to these labels. So you can look up fields from other tables, which is really neat. So common things I see are like the batch expiration date, manufacturing date, things like that that previously would require customizations to get it on the label. Now we can do those things out of the box. And there's this data source ID up here. We click on that, we can actually pick the table that we're talking about. So I'll just show you how this works. If I go to work line details, all right, let's just go bring up the label printer, and we'll keep it right there. So my last label 7 minutes ago was A2. Let's pick one record here with A001. I go to options, let's move that out of the way. Print work lines, so a new button's been added here. and we can choose the layout ID and the printer name, and we can just go print a new label ad hoc on the fly, and boom, now we've got a new label to print it out. I'll just print another one just to show. And I put in reprint up here at the top just to sort of show I was printing it from here. Printed another one, A01, A2. So you can use this a lot of different places. I'm doing it from the work line details. You could do it from a production order, from a release product, you name it. So I'm pretty excited about that. I think that's, having more options to print labels, even though this may not be the primary way to print labels. If a label falls off and you don't know the license plate or something like that, this is a good ad hoc way to do it, to do a reprint. Okay, enough with that for now. Next, let's go back to the PowerPoint and we'll cover, I missed this slide, but that's okay. We sort of covered it anyway. There are options. We can override locations, override license plates. When I showed cluster put away. And then the work confirmation, what fields do you want to scan? So, more scanning equals basically more time, but also more accuracy. So a lot of clients want to scan everything, location, item, enter the quantity. But if you want to go a little faster, maybe a little less accurate, turn off some of those required scanning fields. All right, next let's talk about counting in just a little bit. So there's different ways to create counts. There's a cycle count plan, which is pretty neat. It's an automated recurrence. So you can set up your plan and X number of counts get created a day, and that sort of just happens in the background. You can manually create counts. You can create spot counts, which is what we're going to do today. I would like to talk briefly about item versus full location counts. So typically a count, you need to count the entire location, everything in that location, typically. So when like a cycle count plan runs, it's going to be a full location count. You get one count work ID per location. But there is a partial location count for an item count. So you can do like certain items you can count, you can kick off those, but those do not work with the automated count plans. So the last count date is not, that's a field on the location. It's not recorded for partial location counts. So just keep an eye out for that. Typically explaining this to new clients, item versus full location counts. A lot of clients are used to ABC style counts and not necessarily counting a full location. So this is often a little bit of a change in my experience. Also, reporting is typically a gap. That's pretty common, I guess, in a lot of areas of new systems. But reporting, especially around cycle counts, I've noticed it is a common gap. A lot of, especially in the finance team, they want to see the total variances, total dollar amounts, and getting that all in a report is often a gap. There's different options to count. You can go up and count the full quantity, and if it's right, you can just sort of call that count complete, or you can scan every item, every serial. And then you can also set up a number of recount attempts. So if you count it wrong the first time, you can try again. Typically, counting is a blind count, so users shouldn't know what's in the location from the system. They shouldn't know I'm supposed to count 20. It should just walk up to the location and count what's there. Sort of best practice on that. So let's go do a count. I'm gonna go into the mobile device. And we're gonna do a count. We'll do a spot count. Go to inventory and spot counting. All right, and I'm gonna count location pick 003, where I've got some data set up. So first off, let's go look at this count, because I just wanna see what's supposed to be in there. So if I go up to my cycle counting, here's what the system thinks is in that location. These items, these sizes, different colors. Here's serial numbers. You can see nothing's counted yet, but this is what's supposed to be there. And what we'll do for this first one, I'm just going to count it without scanning anything. I'm going to enter it manually, and we'll just see how many steps that is. So got one, we'll enter the item number. Okay, we're going to put in a size, medium. Color, gray. That's question number 3. Serial number is question 4. And quantity, 1, question 5. Okay, so that's a little painful, especially if you have to do that 100 times or 1,000 times. So we can see we counted that one. It's complete, but entering all 5 of those things is really, not efficient. So there's a newer feature for GS1 barcode parsing. This one, really excited about this feature. So I'm going to showcase that now to show that those 5 fields that we scanned in, they can all be entered with 1 scan instead of 5. So let me grab the next serial, 33. And what this barcode looks like, I've got it set up to look like this. So we start with the item here, serial number, size, color, and then quantity here at the end. And this is parsed out by different identifiers. So like 3 or 30 is the quantity, 92. And I'll show the setup form behind this as well. But let's just show how quickly we can scan these items now. So look at that, 1 scan, boom, we're done. We go in, it's counted. So instead of the 5, we got all that done in 1 scan. So really efficient way to do it. If you're using variants, if you're using serial numbers, batch numbers, highly recommend looking at this. So it's not really just for GS1 style barcodes that we may see in like retail or something. We can implement this other ways, just like I'm showing it here. So we got 34. Let's see, 35 is next, and this one has a different color. So we'll notice white is in this barcode. All right, next one is 36, large and white, different size and color. And then 37, last one. All right, and now the system knows we're done counting that. Do we want to add anything else, or do we want to complete it? And we'll just close that out. So if I come back and refresh, we're done. We've counted all these, no issues. We can accept and reject if needed, if there are variances, but no variances in the happy path scenario here. Just real quick, let's go look at the GS1 setup. There's a policy that I'm using here called purchase receiving. Here's the different identifiers I'm using, and that's how we're filling in all of these fields. And then you associate this policy to the mobile device menu item. So if we go look at spot count, for example, spot counting, here's the policy, purchase receiving. That's how that all works. All right, next let's jump over into picking. So I know we're going quick, but we only got about 10 minutes left. Picking's probably the most time is spent focused on this area. Getting parts out the door, making sure they're picked in an efficient manner. Probably most focus in most projects go into this area. And certainly receiving, putaway is important, counting's important. Picking's really important to make sure you're picking the right parts. And especially if there's tight windows, customers need it right away, you need to get it out the door. So how you create the work is important. Releasing work to the warehouse, how that happens. There's an automated way to release the work. You know, you might do it manually or through a workbench. There's a release to warehouse form you can use. Maybe you're using load planning to release the load to the warehouse. There's different picking options, strategies, you know, user directed, system directed, where it just takes me into the next work ID, cluster picking, which is similar to that cluster put away that we saw earlier. So that's sort of sorting things out as we're picking, sorting it to the right box. I love to use the open work list for picking. I'll show an example of that today. The open work list is your friend when it comes to showing what work needs to be done. Zone picking is pretty common. I'll show how I set that up. Maybe there's a better way to set it up. I'll show you an example of how I do it. The put location for picking is important. Do we want to just pick straight to the bay door? Do you want to go to a pack station? Maybe a staging location. Maybe you want to go from the pick location to inspection, to staging, to a truck. There's different methods for that, you know, all varying in complexity. The reservation hierarchy plays a big role in picking for batch and serialized parts. So that's if the warehouse has to pick a certain batch or certain serial, or if they can pick any batch or any serial. So be careful with the reservation hierarchy setup. I find a lot of clients, the full button is a little confusing. That's just when the picking pallet's full. So if you're picking large items and the pallet's full, use the full button. That'll start a new picking pallet for you. And then short picking, if there's not enough inventory, you can short pick it. And there isn't even an option to adjust out the inventory that was not present in the location. So let's go back into F&O and take a look at a couple examples. I'm going to head over to my all work, and we'll go and take a look at zone picking first. So you can see I've got these two work IDs with zone 1 and zone 2. If I go into this first one with zone 1, it's in pick location 1. If I go into that, I can see it's tied to pick zone 1. So I use this work pool to put in the zone ID, and that's picked up from the work template. Same thing with zone 2, pick 2, there's zone 2. So if you need to segment things out by zones, this is how I typically do it. I'll show what that looks like from the mobile device. If we go into outbound, zone pick. So this is an open work list, but it's starting by asking me to scan the zone. So I'll put in zone 1, and it's going to show us that work ID 23 that I'm on back here. Same thing, I'll go in again and just put in zone 2. Zone 2. And there we go. There's our picking for zone 2. We're not actually going to go through that pick. I just wanted to show that. Let's go into the open work list though, and we'll do one quick sales order pick. So if I go into open sales picks, we're going to work on this pick, this work ID right here. I've already created the sales order and I've released it to the warehouse. So I've got, let me get rid of this for a minute. So here's what we're going to be picking, one of these smartwatches out of that pick 3 location. So we'll just go through an example of this. It's work ID 38. I can see work ID 38 on my open work list. I'll just select that to initiate the pick. Now I'm going to scan the serial number. So here, this is a medium in gray. And what I'm going to do is grab one of those barcodes that we scanned earlier. We'll do that we scanned into the counting. And I'm going to put it right here in that serial field. So even though this has a lot more data than just the serial number, it's got the item, you know, size, color, quantity. We can still enter that here in the serial number field. Scan that. Done. Picking's complete. We'll take that over to the bay door. Yeah, work's complete. Refresh. Our work is done. Okay, and then often the next step after picking, there's a pack station out of the box. Shipping. I'll just open up the pack station to show the screen. This is the setup screen here, but processing the shipment confirmation, ultimately posting the packing slip, and then eventually invoicing the customer. Those steps all have to happen in sequence, to get that invoice processed. All right, so let's come back to the PowerPoint. That really wraps up the demo. We've got just 5 minutes left, but we covered receiving quickly, put away, counting, and picking. And again, these are kind of common areas that I see in pretty much every warehousing implementation. Just some final thoughts. Some of the highlighted features I dove into are cluster put away, GS1 barcode parsing, the new acceptance tests around location directives, and the custom label printing buttons. And there's a lot that we didn't cover. We didn't have time, but we could have covered replenishment, slotting, production items, production menu items like starting, report is finished, production picking. There's labor standards where we can have times estimated and